Diversity is still lacking in the tech industry, and it's not clear if it's going to get any better. Here's a quick snapshot of the current state of diversity in tech. Sexual harassment allegations and lawsuits about pay equity. But it's not all bad. Last month, Uber released its highly anticipated first ever diversity report. As I mentioned at the time, Uber's report was not the worst thing ever, meaning when it comes to diversity, Uber is doing better than some companies, but not as good as others. Meanwhile, in honor of Equal Pay Day earlier this month, Salesforce announced that it had spent about $6 million in the last couple of years to fix any gender and race-related pay gaps. But as all tech companies seem to say when they release their diversity reports, there's still more work to be done. Today, I'm chatting with Damien Hooper-Campbell, eBay's head of diversity, to learn about what that work entails.
Damien Hooper-Campbell is eBay's chief diversity officer, the first ever person to hold that role at the company. Prior to that, he was Uber's head of diversity. At eBay, Hooper-Campbell is in charge of creating new programs and initiatives that foster diversity and inclusion.
All right, I'm gonna try something new here.
Okay.
So on a scale of 1 to 10,
Yes.
10 being the best, like the tech industry is doing an amazing job at diversity in tech,
Right.
what would you rate it?
I would say we're at about a 5 right now, and that's pushing it.
Right, so in the last couple of months or so, like we've heard about, there were sexual harassment allegations at Uber, the Department of Labor filed a lawsuit against Palantir claiming racial discrimination. The Department of Labor also filed something against Google for pay discrimination. Are we moving backwards, or like how do those cases kind of fit into the broader movement for diversity in tech?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, this is no knock to any company, because that can be any company. It can be any company, and if you look back and across industries, it's been pretty much every company. I do not think that means we're moving back. I actually think the fact that the spotlight is on our industry is a positive sign that we have to move forward. If we're keeping it real and if we really are dedicated to this, we should welcome all of that scrutiny. And at the same time, make sure that, when that scrutiny comes, it's not individuals who are throwing stones in a glass house. You saw the Times produce a piece not too long ago that said, look, we've been coming after all these folks on diversity and inclusion, but we had to press pause and look internally and see, wow, we don't even have our own home in order, right? So I don't think anybody's immune to it, and I do think it's a positive thing. I don't think that it means we're moving backwards per se. It's just the light's being shined.
Right, right, yeah, and I think that's great. And something else that has kind of come up in this conversation is that, so I mean, early on, and when people started looking at diversity and inclusion at tech companies, there was a lot of focus on like actual like numbers of, let's say, like Black and Latina people at the company, et cetera, or like number of women. But now there's kind of more of a focus on, inclusion and making sure that once people get there that they actually feel welcome. What are your thoughts on implementing a sort of policy around like retention stats, or even some way of measuring like what inclusion or how inclusion is actually at certain companies?
I'd like to see us, as we think about the future when it comes to policies, I'd like for it to be less HR policy, although those things are necessary and in place, especially at eBay, and more almost a personal policy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense for sure. And I think something else that just comes up in diversity reports from companies, they always say, oh, but we have more work to do. Like, this is where we're at, and we know we have more work to do. I'm not sure if you've ever said that.
You will never see me write that, all right? That is on camera. Damien Hooper-Campbell will never put in a report we have more work to do. Even though it's true, it makes my skin crawl when I hear it. But go ahead.
I mean, I guess, well, why does it make your skin crawl? I mean, I can't
because I think it's almost like, duh, we have more work to do, right? And maybe it's just the choice of words, and I've heard it so often And, I just prefer to say something different, because then it just sounds like you're saying the same thing that everybody else is saying.
Right.
And I believe in a unique delivery of a common message.
Yeah. And so, but what would it look like when there's no more work to be done?
The goal is put me out of a job, right? When this is second nature, when it is embedded into the way that we design products, when it's embedded into the people we think about as our customers, when a company is, or a leader at a company is on stage giving, a financial projection or historical readout, and they're talking about the things that help to drive business and the things that they absolutely can't do without. Diversity and inclusion is right there. It's not a separate thing for a separate conversation. That's what it would look like. It would also look like, obviously, a more diverse, across all the dimensions of diversity, the protected categories and beyond, workplace. But even more than that, just like people being super deliberate around keeping it real and just having real conversations. I often say when I'm speaking to audiences, if you don't know if you should call me Black or African American or Caribbean, because I am half Guyanese, like, don't just not say anything, just ask me. And I need to be in a position where I'm cool enough not to get pissed off about it. So like when we start seeing more of those conversations, when we start seeing, and I'm gonna go here, even though, it may not be popular, but when we start seeing not just underrepresented minorities being involved in the conversation, but also the majority being involved in the conversation. When, people sometimes call tech liberal, so when we can have a conversation around liberal politics, but then the people who have conservative views also feel comfortable speaking up. We don't have to agree, but we do need to make sure that we're respecting each other. That's what no more work to do would look like. But because we are human, and because there will always be biases in this world, some of them are our fault, some of them are not our fault, I don't think we're ever gonna be at a place where people like me who are focused on this work as their life's passion are out of a job.
Right. That makes sense. Thanks so much for your time, Damien.
Okay, thank you.